Look, we all know being a teenager can be a total roller coaster of emotions. But what happens when those low moods aren't just a passing phase? What if it's more like this constant, lingering cloud that just refuses to lift? Well, today we're going to talk about that cloud, persistent depressive disorder in teens.
And this is really the million-dollar question for so many of us. Parents, teachers, even teens themselves. How in the world do you tell the difference between typical teenage sadness and a chronic mental health condition? It's a really critical distinction, but man, it can be so hard to see clearly.
Okay, so the core difference here is all about their nature. Typical sadness, it's usually temporary, right? It's tied to something specific, like a bad grade or a breakup. It comes and then it goes. PDD, on the other hand, is chronic. It's pervasive. It's this low-level gloom that just sticks around for a year or even more. And here's the key. It really gets in the way of daily life in a big way.
So this condition has a formal name, persistent depressive disorder, or PDD. You might also hear its older name, dysthymia. For teenagers, the key thing for a diagnosis is a persistent low mood that lasts for at least 1 full year. Now, the symptoms might feel less intense than a major depressive episode, but it's the chronic nature, the fact that it just doesn't go away, that makes it so challenging.
So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, the symptoms of PDD go way beyond just feeling sad. They can pop up in a teen's emotions, in their behavior, and even in their physical health. Let's break those down. Emotionally, you're looking at a constant undercurrent of sadness, or, and this is super common in teens, irritability. This isn't just having a bad day. It's like their whole worldview is colored by low self-esteem and this nagging feeling of just not being good enough. Over time, that can really build into a deep sense of hopelessness about everything. And all those tough feelings on the inside, well, they often start to show up on the outside. You might notice a teen pulling away from their friends, or maybe they drop out of clubs and sports they used to love. They might seem to just lack any get up and go and can come across as emotionally flat, which, by the way, is so often misinterpreted as just being lazy or apathetic. You know, the mind and body are totally connected, and PDD is a perfect example of this. The disorder can be physically exhausting, causing this constant fatigue. It can completely mess with sleep. Either they can't sleep or they sleep all the time. You might see changes in their appetite. And often, teens with PDD will complain about frequent headaches or stomach aches that don't seem to have any clear medical cause. So this leads to the next big question. Where does this even come from? And the truth is, there's no single simple answer. PDD really comes from a complex mix of internal, biological factors and external environmental pressures. It's a complicated picture. On the internal side, you've got things like a genetic predisposition. If mood disorders run in the family, that can increase the risk. This can get tangled up with psychological stuff, like a habit of negative self-talk. Then, on the external side, you have all the stressors from the environment. Things like conflict at home, bullying, intense pressure from school, and of course, the unique pressures of social media, which can just pour gasoline on those feelings of inadequacy.
Understanding the symptoms and the causes is so important, because if it's left unaddressed, the ripple effect of PDD can be absolutely profound. This isn't something a teen just gets over. It has serious, long-term consequences.
Now, if you look at the estimates, they suggest that about 2 to 3% of adolescents experience PDD. But, and this is a really big but, the real number is almost certainly much higher. Why? Because the symptoms can be pretty subtle and so easily brushed off as just being a teenager. And that means so many young people are out there struggling in silence without a diagnosis or any support.
And that silence, that struggle, can have some devastating effects down the road. A teen with untreated PDD is at a much higher risk of developing major depression later on. It can lead to substance use as a way to cope. It can strain relationships with family and friends, hurt their grades, and ultimately make that transition into being an independent adult so much harder. Okay, that was all pretty heavy, but here's the most crucial takeaway. There is hope. There is help. PDD is treatable. The path to getting better usually involves a combination of professional help, personal habits, and really strong support systems. Psychotherapy is a huge piece of the puzzle. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is super effective because it directly targets those chronic negative thought patterns and helps to rewire them. Family therapy can be a game changer for improving the support system at home, and group therapy gives teens a space to connect with other kids who actually get what they're going through. But therapy is just one piece of a much bigger approach.
For some teens, medication like SSRIs prescribed by a doctor can be really helpful. That's usually combined with promoting healthy habits, and we can't overstate the power of regular exercise, good sleep, and balanced nutrition. And all of this is built on a foundation of catching it early and having strong social support.
And, that support network, it has to be bigger than just family and friends. Schools and the entire community have a massive role to play here. By running awareness campaigns, providing easy-to-access counseling, and training teachers to recognize the early signs, we create a safety net that can catch these teens before they fall too far.
So this brings us to the final crucial question. The treatments are out there, the support systems can be built, but none of it matters if a teen doesn't feel safe enough to ask for help in the first place. So I'll leave you with this to think about. In our schools, in our families, and in our communities, how can we break the stigma and create environments where reaching out isn't a sign of weakness, but is seen as the first brave step towards lifting that lingering cloud?